This is hacking your perceptions.
Right now, we're inside a computer program.
Is it really so hard to believe?
This isn't real.
Real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
So, I'm Lance, Travis, and Ben. We all formed a company called Holosoft. Holosoft is really a company where we believe the information age has evolved. Welcome to the age of experiences, and we like building the XR experiences, so we'll keep coming back to that. So, we also run and founded the Madison.net user group, so if you like to program computers, we have an online group now. We'll go back to in person at some point in time. But let's see. Can your perception be hacked? So let's see.
The fact that reality is whatever your mind infers from the nerve impulses sent by your sensors, based on its model of the world, is at the heart of what makes VR different and more powerful than anything that has come before. Pick a pill and keep your eyes on it. Got it? Let's mask off everything else. Interesting. You were pretty sure that out there in the real world, one pill was red and one was blue. But they're exactly the same shade of gray. Take a good look at the blue tiles on top of the left cube. Okay, now take a good look at the yellow tiles on top of the right cube. You think those are colors you're seeing now? Let's mask off everything but those particular tiles. They're all exactly the same shade of gray. See the white tile under the desk and the black tiles just outside the desk? Again, let's mask off everything else. And again, they're both exactly the same shade of gray. But if one of them is in shadow and is that shade of gray, it must be white. And if another one is in bright light and is that shade of gray, it must be black. Your visual system does the inference for you automatically, and what you see is white and black rather than gray. Here we have a nice square checkerboard. Let's add some dots and see what happens. This happens because some line detectors fire that normally wouldn't be triggered by a checkerboard. Rather than looking orthogonal, the corners look bowed. Okay, that's just weird. Here's what's actually happening. Real objects, especially faces, tend to be convex. So your visual system assumes convexity in the absence of cues to the contrary. The only way to make that assumption work in this case is for the head to be moving in very odd ways, so that's exactly what you see. As the oracle might say, here's what's really going to bake your noodle later on. Now that you know what's happening, try to see the dragon as it really is. I bet you can't do it. A little bit of conscious knowledge isn't going to undo millions of years of evolution and a lifetime of looking at faces.
Bar, 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 bar.
Obviously, she's saying bar, bar, bar. Now let's watch a slightly different video.
Bar, 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 bar.
Here we can clearly hear her saying far, far, far. Except that she isn't. The video shows her saying far, but the audio track is still of her saying bar exactly as she did in the first video. The visual input overrode the audio. To make it crystal clear what's going on, let's look at this one more time. Once again, we'll have a soundtrack that says bar, but this time we'll have a split screen with a face saying far on one side and a face saying bar on the other. As this plays, move your eyes from one side to the other and observe how what you hear changes.
Bar, 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 bar.
So what did you guys hear? As you moved your eyes from one side to the other, did you hear a change? That weirded the crap out of me. I mean, that was pretty wild. So let's step back. Now that proved to me that we could hack my perception. Let's talk about what we can do in that perspective in regards to XR. So let's step through and see what these different technologies are. So, is this what VR is? Can you guys read that in the back? So, heads up, this next one's not me. So that's definitely VR for me. That's my favorite game. That's what I spend a lot of time in my exercise. Now, what's augmented reality? Can anyone tell me what augmented reality is? Is it this? Is this the first thing that we start? Is this what got augmented reality into our vernacular? It is for me. And it is, I think it actually lent a lot of credence to what we do on a daily basis, that this was the first thing that got augmented reality into our vernacular. But augmented reality is also this. This is all about the metadata that allows us to negotiate all these different scenarios. In this particular case, going through a warehouse. I want to know where that data is. I want to know where that pallet is. This is also metadata. It's where we are in the grocery store. And this is also metadata. This is slightly speculative. There are a couple cars that are actually doing this, but this is going to be amazing. A couple cars that I know as of right now have some heads-up displays, and they're getting more and more, and we'll get to this. What is mixed reality?
Microsoft Hololens brings holograms into your real world. Using transparent lenses, spatial sound, and an understanding of your environment, holograms look and sound like they're actually part of the world around you. That is mixed reality.
But that's mixed reality. So if you haven't seen a HoloLens, HoloLens allows you to basically use mixed reality to scan your surrounding with the sensors. It basically has a Kinect sensor in the band. If you've ever seen a Kinect sensor, remember the Kinect sensor back from the Xbox days. Exactly, famous good stuff. So it has that entire kit sensor basically built into the mixed reality headset. So that's going to allow us to do things like this. It's allowing us to do this like today. We can collaborate in the scenario of an architecture group. I know I went to college with an architecture major, and the little freaking toothpicks of wood were all over the room all the time. Now, this is what they're using. IoT, heads-up displays. Now we've got all of these devices that are generating all this data, but they don't have displays on them. We're going to be able to take that data and turn it into a heads-up display that we'll be able to see in augmented reality. What is XR? XR is literally just extended reality, and it's a combination of VR, AR, and MR. How real could XR be? Let's look at that.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's too real.
My palms are sweaty.
That is so cool.
I'll have to go back. No, I don't want to.
Oh my god, oh my god.
That's a fun one. Okay. So, how does XR work? So, before we start, we're going to talk about degrees of freedom. So degrees of freedom are the way that users can move in XR. Back when we had the Go, we only had 3 degrees of freedom. So you could basically get your yaw, your pitch, and your roll. But now, with all the latest devices, we have the up, down, left, right, front, back. So you have the full degree, so you can move through your reality, and it really becomes real at that point in time. But here's also how it works.
VR communicates to your brain in a different way than looking at a screen.
When looking at a screen like our TV or phone, our brains read this as a flat image, the same way it would a picture. If an object on a screen gets bigger or smaller, or the person on TV moves towards the camera, you don't feel the need to take a step back or move out of their way. But in VR, you might want to, because you're not looking at one screen. You're looking at two,
And those two screens are literally right in front of your eyes.
projecting a slightly different image into each eye, which is how our vision works in the real world. Each eye takes in stimuli from a slightly different vantage point. You can test this. Hold your finger up in front of your face and wink each of your eyes. Your finger should jump back and forth. That jump is the difference between what your left and right eye are seeing.
And the differences between what your eyes see conveys depth. It conveys 3 dimensions.
This is known as stereopsis, and VR developers have spent a lot of time perfecting it. But what use is depth if you can't move through it? Which brings us to the next most important way virtual reality tricks your brain.
You are the camera, and it's fast enough where your brain starts interpreting it as your perspective.
Head tracking allows a person in VR to look and move around a fake world in the same way that we look and move around a real one. If you look to the left, you'll see more of the world to your left, and if you look down... Okay, maybe don't look down. Other subtle effects make virtual spaces feel more real, like 360 audio, which is a big part of the plank experience. As you turn your head, the wind will subtly change. The plank creaks. And if you listen closely, a heartbeat slowly begins to speed up. Our brain takes all this new virtual stimuli and begins to believe this is reality.
Our brain has never really learned within the last 150,000 years to actually distinguish between computer-generated content and the real world.
Dr. Frank Stanica has been studying immersive technologies like VR for nearly 20 years.
And if all the cues that we perceive in the virtual environment are so similar to the cues that we get in the real world, it makes kinds of sense that we are unable to clearly distinguish between both.
Our brains quickly adapt to virtual environments largely because it's wired to trust our sense of sight.
There's some research showing that approximately 80% of all the information that we perceive from our environment are based on vision.
And this allows VR developers to manipulate our reality even further.
We found out about 10 years ago is that if we guide users on a circular arc with a radius of 20 meters, they have no chance to identify that they actually walk on a circle in the real world when they see a straight path in the virtual environment.
You can walk an entire virtual city without ever leaving a room. Once we believe the environment is real and accept that we're actually in it, our brains then go on to fill in some other blanks.
There are interesting findings that, for example, if you are in the virtual world in a very, let's say, snow or icy environment, people feel cold, although they're in the real world maybe in a hot environment.
Outside of games, VR has actually shown a lot of promise in the medical world, from reducing pain in burn victims by immersing them in a snowy world while their bandages are being changed, and with exposure therapy that helps people with phobias like a fear of heights and body dysmorphia. It's also being used for physical therapy, like assisting elderly people with their balance. Right now, we're still tethered to a system with a headset on our faces. The graphics are nice, but not perfect. And so we're not fully immersed when we hover 80 stories above the ground. That is, we can still remember to take the headset off. Stanica cautions that it might not always be that way.
We can easily assume that within the next 5 to 10 years or so, we will not be able to distinguish visually computer-generated content from real-world content anymore. And then, of course, there are a lot of ethical questions.
For now, VR might not look exactly like reality, but it follows a lot of the rules our brain has learned to perceive as real. And that's often enough to make us sweat.
So, through XR, our brains become more accurate recording memories. Why is this important? Because this University of Maryland study, 9% more accurate between desktop computer learning and virtual reality learning. 9%, not bad. That's pretty significant. On the other hand, 12% faster traditional training versus VR training. So those don't seem like big numbers, but 9 to 12% could be the difference between winning and losing, or in extreme circumstances, the difference between life and death. We're using these training techniques in the NFL to train players. We're using these training techniques in education. If you can do 9 to 12% better on your test, that takes you from a B to an A, or maybe even from an F to a C, and you live. XR activates the motor cortex and our sensory systems in a way that is highly analogous to real-life experiences. And we can see that in MR scans, basically brain scans. And they can look at all of the activation centers of your brain and see that your brain, who has had 150,000 years of getting to where we are, essentially, cognitively, cannot tell the difference between a good VR, XR simulation and real life. You maybe know at this point in time, like I say at this point in time, you know, your brain doesn't know. So we can use that to put you into these scenarios where you learn a lot better and are more interactive with what we're doing. One thing I always get is, I don't want to try VR. I get sick. So let's talk about that really briefly. What is VR sickness? VR, which is also called VR motion sickness. So VR sickness, the cause is conflicting signals from your eyes versus your inner ear. So what your eye sees and your inner ear, as long as they go together, you're good. But as soon as your eye sees something and your ear goes, I don't sense it, the leading theory is that your brain says, holy crap, I've been poisoned. And the poison is actually stopping the coordination between those two things. So when you're poisoned, what do you want to do? You want to do what the pumpkin's doing. So that is the leading theory thus far, and to me it has a lot of credibility. I don't get sick on roller coasters. I don't get sick on cars, boats. But if you put me in an uncomfortable game, it's no good. I'm not going to be in that game for very long. So as an XR user, what can you do? Pick comfortable games. They have a rating when you go to get the games. Pick the ones that are comfortable. Pick Moss. Moss, for example, is a fantastic game where you're kind of like a god over this little mouse and kind of helping him negotiate through territory. Versus Epic Roller Coaster Vomit. Epic Roller Coaster. So do that. Now as an XR creator, what to do? Well, it's really important to make sure that we get our frames per second, which when you are running a game, every time in a game loop, it keeps running through that frame. And you need to make sure that you're displaying 60 frames minimum, 60 to 90 frames, or they get too slow and it can cause VR sickness. At that same point in time, anyone know what teleportation is in a game? Cool. So what that basically is, do teleportation versus force movement. Teleportation is you trick your brain by doing little leaps. So instead of walking through the game, like dragging you through slowly, you do little leaps. And that actually tricks your brain. And you can actually figure out what your threshold is, how many little leaps it takes to go through there. There are things that they're working on in the underlying operating systems that will hopefully just make that ubiquitous for all games. You'll be able to set that on a per individual basis. But for right now, pick teleportation games, or at least pick that option to go through things. I really like fixed play area games, like Beat Saber. You're in a fixed place, you're kind of moving yourself. Space Pirate Trainer is another excellent one where you're kind of moving in your space. So that's great. And I like mixed reality versus strictly VR. So if you use pass-through, anyone know what pass-through mode is? So pass-through mode basically shows you in the Quest. It's really nice because you basically see the background. I would see, if I had the Quest set on now, I would see a black and white version of the entire crowd. And that gives me a really good reference to the world so that when I move around, I've got a very comfortable scenario. I'm not basically completely immersing you in a VR scenario. So those are my tricks. One thing that they're working on now that I've seen some good progress on is something called galvanic vestibular stimulation, GVS. Vestibular? Vestibular. There we go. Thank you. I got call for experts. So what they do is they place little pads on your skin and send a 3D motion signals to your inner ear, tricking your brain into feeling what you're seeing. So when they do that and they coordinate it with what you're seeing visually, you can actually get rid of all of those scenarios. But again, that right now relies on little pads attached to your head. So let's get to hacking. I'm going to say we have three categories, just like most hackers. We have three categories here. We've got the white hackers in regards to VR, and these are people that are responsible experimentations, beneficial manipulations. Then you have the gray hackers, irresponsible experimentations, selfless manipulations and addictions. Maybe that's a company that puts, do you guys know that if you give little brief snippets of cats popping up, that it actually triggers endorphins in your brain that make you happy? I believe that explains the entirety of the internet, by the way. So you can have little pop-up kittens, little pop-up things, and that actually makes it so you pay attention more for the next 30 seconds. Scientifically proven that you pay attention for the next 30 seconds more than you did previously if you did not know that those kittens and puppies were popping up. So that's an interesting one. And then obviously we have the black hackers. They can do malicious things and purposeful harm. And we'll talk through some of those scenarios, what those purposeful harm can be.
Fantastic. Great. Nice. Great.
Más tarde, apúrate si quieres una buena calificación.
Voy lo más rápido que puedo.
¿Has pensado en correr? Es saludable y eficiente.
Seguro que no hay más trabajos disponibles. Yo estudié para ser profesora y estoy haciendo mercados.
Y además puedes quedarte con los puntos de fidelización. Eres una monje afortunada. Tienes que confiar en la aplicación. ¿Te sientes inspirada? Gracias. Chao.
¿Quién soy yo? No, eso no es lo que quiero decir. ¿Para dónde voy? No. Puedo volver a empezar. Olvídalo.
Estoy presente ahora. Me amo. Estoy libre de mi ira. Estoy libre de mi tristeza. Y el amor es mi eternidad.
Habla español.
Adiós.
Hola, me llamo María.
Bueno. Hola otra vez. Ay, no, cállate. ¿Qué está pasando?
Buen día, Emilio. ¿Qué puedo hacer por usted?
¿Qué está pasando? Mis puntos están bien.
No se preocupe, sus puntos están seguros conmigo. ¿Le puedo ayudar en algo más, Emilio?
Yo no soy Emilio, yo soy Juliana Restrepo.
Por favor, espero.
Hola, Juliana Restrepo. Me alegra verte. ¿Qué puedo hacer por ti?
Mis puntos están bien. ¿Qué está pasando?
Tranquila, todo está bien. Parece que alguien está intentando vulnerar su cuenta. Por favor, espere mientras reinicio su dispositivo. Hola, Juliana. Me alegra verte. Hoy te ves hermosa. ¿Estás estrenando zapatos?
Ya lo arreglaron. Tengo que seguir trabajando.
Estoy trabajando en eso, pero necesito verificar tu información biométrica. Por favor, sigue la línea azul hasta el centro de servicio más cercano para confirmar tu identidad.
Sí, pero mis puntos están bien.
Todo está bien. Chao.
¿Qué? ¿Qué es esto? ¿Qué? ¿Qué está pasando? No, mis puntos, mis puntos. ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué es eso?
Si soy yo así que va a tirar para adelante, déjamelo.
Wow, what a future that could potentially be. I mean, there were a lot of great things. Look at this part. Remember when the road clears and it gives you really clear information about, say again?
That somebody's coming, right?
Yeah, that somebody's coming.
Safety.
That safety. You're the road. You know the road. Get out of the way. It's going to give you some information, contextual information. There's a lot of great information in there. But however, when this happens, that wasn't supposed to happen. That's the hacker getting in there. And then this, you can't take out your augmented reality. Potentially, maybe she has contacts on. She can't take it off. This person's digitally masked themselves and garbled their face so they can't see who they are, and they're able to come in there and then get a bioscan trace from her getting her blood. Again, theoretical, not here yet, but I find that has got both really good points and really bad points, and when we're talking about really hacking your perception, that is absolutely perfect analogy of what we're going to do. So, now, this is the part where we're going to have more interactivity, even more than we have so far. Let's analyze some vulnerabilities together. What are the vulnerabilities here? First of all, what is this?
Boundary.
Setting up the boundary. Absolutely correct. What are the vulnerabilities that people think could potentially happen here if somebody is able to get access to your headset?
You could walk them into very dangerous things.
You could walk into very interesting things. What if it's near your stairs? And you as somebody could basically extend that boundary slightly out past that stairs. Very fascinating. They've actually done a study with this. A lot of games are pretty stationary in the middle. They did something called the human joystick effect. And you're able to take that person and just subtly move them, and they don't realize that they're moving because the environment looks like it's 99% stable. And the person starts in one location, and they take the headset off, and they're in a completely different location. They don't know how they got there. Yeah, I mean, again, the researchers made some really wild claims at this point in time, like maybe you're trying to assassinate that person and you maneuver them in front of a window. But a little wild. But still, the ability that you're controlling their particular environment gives you a lot of control over what they're doing. Here, who knows what this is?
Pass-through.
Say again?
Pass-through.
Pass-through mode, and you're looking at your desktop. This is the way a lot of us are going to work moving forward at some point in time, probably closer than we expect it to be. And this is amazing. You're able to have a full keyboard. You're able to have all your monitors outlaid in front of you.
How many tabs you can have open now? 200?
Tabs all over your house.
You know what? I always say that on my laptop, I have a tab addiction. I have half the memory for the operating system and half the memory for Chrome. And so, but in this particular scenario, now we've got pass-through mode, or we got something else like pass-through mode. What are the possibilities if I'm a hacker and have access to your system? And Facebook and Meta haven't done a nice job of securing this.
Can you manipulate even the entire pass-through data?
You could.
You're able to just layer that on, you can make what that pass-through looks like.
You can control. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you can take that data and be able to see it and then manipulate it, you can absolutely change it. But what about recording it?
Yeah.
What if you're going to have the ability potentially, again, it's a nice job, the Meta's done a really nice job so far with my experience of making so developers don't have access to this, but they're not the only device in town.
You can scan an entire areas of where they're at. You can get entire room data, have that all mapped out.
Yep. You thought there were companies that freaked out about Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Literally freaked out. You can't play Pokemon Go in our location because it's whoever recording every bit of data about our location. Giant companies literally banned it. A game on your phone.
You're looking out the windows, you can catch landmarks and stuff and be able to physically locate someone as well.
That's exactly right. Exactly. You could know exactly where they were. If their device didn't tell you enough about where they were, you can basically figure out where they are by locating it. Fire.
Yeah. So with those Snapchat glasses that they have on too, do they have the same kind of capability of whether or not to triangulate locational data?
So the triangulation happens at a machine learning level.
Yeah.
So as long as they have the ability to capture that video, that's a possibility. So, but on the other hand, there's a lot of huge benefits from these things. So the question is, we got to leverage, we got to weigh one versus the other. Anything else that anyone thought about here? Let's go to this one. Now, my device can see my hands. It can see how I'm moving. What else? What do you think? What's the problem with this?
You can fingerprint somebody based on their dimensions.
I'm not sure you can fingerprint somebody, but you can get biometric.
Get their fingerprint. I mean, you could find out their identity by not just that, but shape of their hands, the way they move.
What they're actually typing.
Yep, that's exactly right there. You got all their passwords by seeing where their fingers are. Every single one of them. Talk about the man in the middle kind of attack. But we'll tie this in a second with something else. You have the ability to see every way this person moves. You could build a digital twin of this person.
Are there's ways of, so when you you're doing certain cryptographic things, there's like salt that you need, and I know I've heard ways with the way that you type stuff will add into that kind of security. Will you be able to recreate that through actually watching somebody move through hands?
Well, as long as we can see what keys they're typing.
And the frequency of what they're doing.
And the frequency, right? I mean, you're going to be able to get literally the entire cadence of the way that they're interacting with it.
Yeah.
So that's something we got to watch out for.
I mean, even if you can't see the keyboard, you could extrapolate enough data from the distance between keys to figure out exactly.
Exactly. It's almost like a crypto cipher key, basically. You figure out on the frequency that they hit X, Y, and Z key. You can then derive, based on the distance and based on the frequency, all of the keys that they're doing. So, what about this scenario that we showed earlier? This is the heads-up display.
Headless
display. So this is the IoT scenario. There's a lot of data coming from these devices, and these guys see these scanners and say, "Oh, it's green, it's good." What if it's not good?
Yep. Make the boiler explode.
Make the boiler explode. You can control all of that data at that point in time. What about this one?
Fast and Furious.
I'm only going 35, even though I'm going actually 55. Or, hey, that clip ain't really there. There are so many ways, and then depending on the opacity of your windshield, I mean, if it's able to, go ahead.
This is actually already a case. They mandate backup cameras on cars, and there have been cases where the video feed will momentarily freeze. And people keep backing up because it's a clear view, but they hit something. Because the picture froze for just a second. But this, of course, is way more,
But that's cool.
Right?
That's something that exists. Yep.
My T-Rex warns me when I'm going too fast.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Right.
Backing
So,
too fast.
yeah, we can take people all kinds of strange ways. How about this one? He looks pretty good. That's a pretty darn good deep fake, and then on top of that. So now we've got deep fakes, and we know all the way that you move. You can make a complete digital twin of somebody and take over that particular way.
My mom already did that.
Your mom already did that?
I'm an identical twin.
The old-fashioned way.
She's hacking your DNA. Nice. All right. We're getting near the end here. Here's something that I found that was fascinating. VR diet. Food that is virtually enlarged to be 50% bigger leads to 10% less consumption. And while food that is virtually shrunk by 30% makes people eat 15% more. So this was a Japanese researcher, and the paper's online, and it's fascinating. And he was able to manipulate that, and over the scan of a number of people, was able to determine these figures. So if we start having these nice augmented reality views, and we want to go on a diet, we have VR start changing our food. They also did a study that you could change the color of the drinks or of the food, and change how appealing they are. Wherein you could actually take a pretty bland piece of food and actually make the person perceive that it tasted much better than it was after the fact. So these little things are really amazing.
Oh my gosh, the $1 million question, will they figure out this size better?
Cookies? It does.
I know I would look like Robert Downey Jr. to my wife.
As long as he doesn't cut your finger off.
There you go. All right, so we're going to finish a little bit early here, but we have plenty of time for questions. Here's my takeaway. As long as we responsibly approach the future of XR with our eyes wide open to the dangers, the good that comes from XR will greatly outweigh the bad. Enjoy the XR of today and look forward to the XR of tomorrow. So, I think that's pretty good.
I mean, I would add to that,
please,
coming from a company that has lots of social controversial.
Yes.
XR, just like social media platforms, is a tool like a hammer, can be used to build a house, or it can be used to smash your kneecaps.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Exactly. Everything. People who equate only bad to things aren't looking nearly at the benefits that they can basically bring to people. So, if you're interested in programming XR or anything along that line, I had a series of blog posts on there to get started with quests. Please hop on there. I actually show you how to go through and set up your Quest, set up pass-through, set up controllers, all kinds of stuff. So this is really, I love this field. We love this field. We see the huge potential, and we're doing a lot of work in this particular field. But we know that there are not nearly enough, we can't do it all. And there are not nearly enough smart people basically working on these problems and are going to capitalize on it. So we're trying to basically, while we learn our craft and how to do it, spread that to everybody here and spread that across the world So get involved and basically give yourself the tool. And first of all, give yourself the props for being here and watching these talks and engaging beyond 9 to 5. So you should all be very proud of yourself for basically being here and taking this time to invest in you, yourself, and your future. So thank you very much.